Very well, welcome to this Sunday's game on this wonderful World Cup Wednesday night. I hope those in Spain are still celebrating, because they should be having a fiesta after they devoured poor old Costa Rica. And right now for the Belgians, because of course we are in Europe, we're looking at European teams, things are going quite well right now. It is 1-0 for them against Canada. So fair play to Belgium. They should be going to the next round anyway. My name is Alan Moore, PRO for Gaelic Games Europe, and straight away I'm going to welcome in my co-host for this evening. Yeah, I have a co-host, and I'm very, very lucky with this one. I'm honoured to have this one, all the way from France, and he's just been saying a few prayers to St. Patrick that a convention goes well this weekend. John Murphy, you're very welcome onto the show again. How are you doing?
Wonderful, Alan. Good evening. How are you getting on?
Very, very good. You look kind of in a shady place, but you look very bright.
Yeah. I'm in a car, so where I'm staying, I was too loud, so I go out to the car. Yeah.
John, listen, before we bring in, because Dara and Tony are waiting to come in to join us. Before we do, can you sum up this year for GGE? Because it's our first full year back out on the pitch, back in the gym, back out socialising. Of course, we had an amazing Pan-Euros. We had great, really good results for our teams in Europe, as in the lesser junior and competitions between yourselves in hurling and football, and of course our ladies Gaelic footballers from Belgium.
Yeah.
Can you sum up for us, just in 10 words, in a minute, how has this year been for Gaelic Europe?
Fantastic. I think it has been a reacclimation of games. We have gotten back to a little bit of normality. We have seen a wonderful kind of, like I said, return to 2019 registration numbers, players. We've seen new things, dynamic things happening, such as the FELA, such as the Galician Schools project. So we've added kind of new flavors onto the GGE kind of palette. And then we've also kept some, what I would call, strong old favorites, like the Pan-European finals in Galicia, the hurling finals. And, we've even been innovative on things such as the Belgian ladies, winning one round and having a hell of a game down in Maastricht last weekend. So, it's been a year of resetting, recalibrating, and what a wonderful foundation building up that we can build on going into 2023. So I think you're on mute, Alan.
That is the course I have with this. I'll tell you something. I sound better on mute, John. That's true. That is true.
Well, I look better on podcasts. Maybe we should swap.
We know that. As I told you, I was always told I have a face for radio, so it works. John, how important is it as well for us to be going down to Malaga for convention? Because, traditionally we'll always see that as kind of, let's just say, Northern Europe. Now we're looking towards a global South, for want of a better word. How important is it to go to Malaga for convention?
So it's kind of a little bit of a complex answer, Alan. I think it is critical that the county has a convention annually, right? It's a great time for us, the officers, to report in what we've been doing for the last 12 months. It's an opportunity to mix and mingle with people that maybe are interested in learning a bit more about kind of the ins and outs of the back office. It's also great. This year, we're hoping to do 3 kind of workshops in the afternoon, which I think will be super important, talking about how we want to look at the World Games, possibly realigning the European football finals, and then thirdly, where we want to go with the men's football that's being led by Matthew Cock. So I think this year it's great. We're going to go into the future always hybrid. So because we want to keep the democracy is super important, right? So everyone has the opportunity to join online if they're unable to join physically. So I think that for me is going to stay. I think, yes, traditionally we would have had done them physically in person, so it was restricted to those clubs that can travel. Over COVID, we saw the great success of doing these things online and had huge, record attendance in 2020 and 2021. I think we're up around like 150, 160 people joining online. So, I don't see why you would reduce that back down to those only capable of traveling. So, yeah, it's a great event. It's an opportunity for us to, show all the hard work we've been doing in the background. And yeah, very much looking forward to it in 2 days.
Again, as I said, when we went online, it was a surprise. A lot, like personally, I thought, how is this going to work out? But it did work out, and I think because we, as a sort of society, adapted to going online. And right now, of course, we're online having a broadcast. I'm in a home studio, and you're in a car, and it's grand. Like the video and audio is grand. John, for next year, before we was in for next year, do you think it's going to be harder because we have World Games coming up? Do you think there's going to be a bit more pressure on us to, even in terms of finances, is there going to be a bit of a strain on us?
No. So I think, from a financial perspective, I think, we always look at it at the start of every year and assess our situation. I think right now where we are is a perfectly sufficient place. We have, extra money in the bank this year that we can carry over to bridge if there is concerns around World Games. There is funding available that'll be made available to youth clubs, to startup clubs. There's the Global Games Development Fund. There will be, hopefully money being put into the World Games. So no, I don't see funding as the difficulty next year. I think it will be building on the momentum that we had this year, right? And actually level setting this and going, okay, we need to make that next step. So I think finances are something that, obviously we live in a reality, right? We don't have infinite, checks. We live in a finite world, so it's about reallocation. But I think for me, it's about continuing the momentum we have this year. And that to me is, because I think if you continue the momentum, everything else starts to come in. Like, you find creative ways of using your budget. You find extra volunteers to help out as coaches. So the momentum is the key. And I think we need to try not let that drop over the next few months into the winter. In fairness, Northwest Iberia are starting up their league, so hopefully they can give the county that boost so that we just keep it up. So I think we start there with the attitude.
Well, that is fair enough, because again, you just need to kind of like keep pushing on. As you said, Iberia now going into their season, so it's handy for us. Going to bring straight in Amanda. He's been harder to track down than the border fox. We don't know where he is. He's from parts unknown at the moment. He is from Cavan. Dara Killian, our treasurer. A very warm welcome. Dara, first question to you. Japan,
yeah. No, it's typical soccer. If you don't take the chances, you get caught out. And,
the friendly, of course, Germany lost 2-1 today to Japan. Not as big as a shock as it was Argentina losing 2-1 to Saudi Arabia yesterday. There's huge stuff going around. This is something we've dealt with, and I believe in many ways we've dealt with quite well in GGE, and that is, of course, with minority representation and integration. Today, for example, I'll put up a slide in a moment. The Daily Mail blamed the fact that the German players did this before the game and made such a fuss about wearing the One Love armband. Dara, has that got much play in Germany?
Yeah, it's massive here. It's there. There's been more focus on that whole equal rights, the whole thing with the migrant workers not being treated properly. That's been a massive thing. There's been TV documentaries. I noticed the Netflix one, but there's also been German ones as well, in parallel to that are focusing on other stuff or whatever. It's been a bit of a circus here now, in fairness. But I'm not sure if it really affected them as much. But at the same time, you got the feeling they definitely weren't as calm or whatever. But then again, as well, they were playing the Bundesliga last weekend. They had a week to get ready, and then they're here. So it's the same for everybody, but at the same time, it's it hasn't been a calm week for them.
Yeah, it seemed difficult. The Daily Mail, of course, they had their opinion on it. It came out today, and you're not surprised to see this, that this is what happens when you focus only on politics. The fans said that Germany deserved to lose, and but listen, that's the Daily Mail, and we're all a little bit wiser than that. John, before I ask a follow up with Dara, in terms of in Holland, you're in France, but in Holland. What has the reaction been to Qatar? I mean, have people been positive, or because Holland, of course, have kicked off? They've already had their opening game of the World Cup, and look at a decent if boring side. What's the reaction like being in Holland, John?
Right, big question. Let's start with the simple one, the style of play. Van Gaal got to a World Cup final playing boring but stable soccer before, so maybe he'll do it again with this side. I think around the politics, they bent the knee to FIFA. I don't necessarily know if I do the same in Van Dijk. I think he's a captain, right, in his spot. I think, as much as I think he talked about, focusing on football and not politics, but he's a role model, right? Like, these are the people that we talk about getting our kids to look up to, right? That's why there's a big focus on, the women's 2020 in Ireland, to get more girls a positive role models representation. Here was the men's football, and they shrunk under the pressure of the spotlight. And I think it is kind of deplorable that you had 7 associations who clearly felt very strongly about this and then balked at the last thing at the idea of a yellow card. I mean, Van Dijk is well able to pick up yellow cards. He might as well do it for a good cause rather than a nasty leg tattle. The focus in the Netherlands has been, I would say, very similar to Germany, right? In terms of, there's been a lot of spotlight on the conditions of the workers. Van Gaal talked about going to meet them recently. So we'll have to see how it unfolds. But it's this to me is the beginning of the end, possibly, for soccer. I think this highlights a lot of the issues there's kind of a collection of issues being highlighted in 2022 in soccer that could be very interesting for the long-term impact they'll have.
John, before I ask Dara, that's something that actually came to me last night, because we had the Winter League finals last night, and we had students, like guys and girls, lads from Zambia and Zimbabwe, who basically, when they go off, like literally to get a water break, just sticking on their phone to see what's going on with Chelsea, or if there's Premier League match or Champions League match. Literally, as they're warming down, they had the phone out to watch it. Last night, I asked them, why is not all looking at it, like the game starting like at 10 o'clock? They're like, we're playing Gaelic football. And I mean, as nice as it was for me to hear, it was also a bit worrying. Dara, do you think that maybe with if Harry Kane had have taken a yellow card for wearing an armband, that would have saved things? Do you think that maybe players should the players have stood up a bit more? It's
hard to know. It's easy for us from Ireland to say they should have took a yellow card, and Roy Keane there, who didn't even play the bloody World Cup, he's well used to dropping out. But it's easy as, like Denmark and whatever. You're not going to win the World Cup, but the likes of England or Germany, I think that they're going, if wasn't it Gaza got the yellow card and was going to miss out in the World Cup final, but they didn't get anywhere. But it's in their mind. They're looking for the cup, and they're a bit more ruthless. And I think that this whole FIFA pressure with the yellow cards really hit through to the bigger teams.
John, you're going to come in.
Yeah, but would you not think on a stage, having built up to it for so long, Dara, that it's kind of a false dawn when they're making a big statement about it when they're in Europe, and then to actually follow through is now their opportunity and they backed out of it?
It's hard to know. It's hard to know. I to be honest, I was before the tournament. I was thinking, yeah, they have to make a hard stand, and then you see slowly that we've this European mindset. Like Ireland came in with the gay marriage, and that has been sort of a bit like the plastic bag levy, sort of going across Europe, tagged on by everybody else. Somebody does something, then everybody follows. Like it'll take a while before Qatar follows, but to expect that they're going to just somehow become a liberal society overnight because we asked them nicely, or a few soccer players decide to sort of make a stand, it's not going to happen. And that's been a point I've heard made a few times, and yeah, there's a truth to it as well. They have to be. It's a process that they're starting and that they're going to have to get through at some stage, and we've done it. But I mean, if you think back to the 50s, Alan Turing in England was castrated for being gay. He invented the first proper working computer, and he got no credit for it, and he ended up being castrated for being gay, and that was England. And now England is telling everybody else how to live. So there was a process there that England went from what you would call very tolerant values to where they are now, and Qatar and these other countries as well are going to have to catch up. But
it is a two-way street as well, because if we, for example, when I lived in Saudi Arabia for 2 years, I was aware not to be going around wearing shorts, because it was basically, they said it's offensive, you shouldn't do it. Fine, don't be drinking in the streets, for example, in Saudi. You can drink at home, take care of yourself, the whole grand, but it is that kind of I saw more alcohol in Saudi than anywhere else in the world. Like it's there, drugs are there, everything you want is there, but it's kind of hidden behind the scenes. At the same time, then I always say that, okay, I respect when I go to their country, like not to carry on or behave bad, and then it has to be a two-way street as well. So I think some people have used that a two-way street kind of deal, where we won't go and drink in streets over there, but then you have to not wear a veil over here. So there has been conversation, but I'm going to bring Tony Bass, who's sitting waiting to join in. And Tony, welcome in. You're in Holland as well. Are you happy that the Oranje are doing well at the moment?
Yeah, well, I've talked to, generally speaking, that they played well the other night, but yeah, 2-0 against Senegal. Senegal, not the worst team in the world, so I think people here are reasonably happy. I'm down in Maastricht. We're on the border with Belgium, so there's a lot of interest in the game that's on tonight. And yeah, I'm probably the happiest in the studio because I drew Spain in the club sweepstakes, so a 7-0 today. We'll take that.
Yeah, it's
I think.
Sorry, John.
No, I was going to say, I think whoever bet on a Saudi win and a Japan win, whatever guy went to the bookies there, that's probably the happiest man in the world or woman in the world.
We could have cleaned up.
Yeah.
I'm still doing okay though, because I'm in the Amsterdam hurling last man standing, and I'm still in there. There was a fundraiser for the Amsterdam hurling team going over to play in Leinster as the Wicklow champions, and they did brilliantly. Obviously, everything was against them. The game was shifted at the last minute. They played up the side of Kilimanjaro by all accounts, and the grass hadn't been cut in about 3 years. But they managed to, on the home pitch for the Wicklow champions, they managed to give them the 2 points. So that was great. But having said that, as I said, the week has started well. Looking forward to convention now, and the day after, I'll still be in Malaga when Spain are playing Germany. Can't wait to see that one with the Spanish crowd around me.
Dara, are Germany out because if they don't beat Spain, they are out because Japan are going to beat Costa Rica?
No, they can still get through. If I read it correctly today, after points, it goes to goals difference and goals scored, and then it's head-to-head, unlike some other competitions. So they can still get a goal difference and end up on whatever 2 wins, but they have to beat Spain.
That's what we're looking at earlier on with on Capital Sports. We're saying that
it's funny how people say about groups of death. If you ever look at, there's 4 very strong teams. People go that it's a group of death, and there's people. You're unfortunate. If anything, it's actually not as bad as maybe you'd think, because if you're in a group with a couple of weak teams and you get a shock result like Germany had, you're suddenly looking that everybody's going to, the other the other two teams that are halfway strong are going to beat the weak team or weak teams, and then you'll end up with very little way out. But because the Costa Rica is going to lose all their games, I think that's pretty much a given. Whereas if you had a proper group of that, you don't know what that fourth place team would do. And so Germany actually would be better with nearly a harder group, a harder fourth place team that could maybe cause an upset against Japan, or well, even get a draw against Spain, but it's not going to happen. Oh, I'm sorry, I've already lost to Spain.
Darius just prayed they don't go to the group stage again.
Sorry? Yeah, I remember we had our end of year party back in 2018, and it was the night that Germany played Sweden. And I just remember it was down in Sochi, and I just remember, there with two Swedes and a couple of Germans, like members of the club, and they were just the Germans were just saying, we're going to lose this. There was just such a lack of, I don't know, energy about them or something. And it seemed that they strolled in from being absolutely imperious in Brazil to falling apart. But back onto other matters, games related. Sorry, we've gone into the World Cup, which is natural. And John White's going to come in now in just 1 second. Tony, we were discussing about what people are standing for or not standing for or kneeling for in Qatar. And Roy Keane, of course, went on his rant saying that, like, it shouldn't be in Qatar and so on. And the obvious question was, then why are you there? Like, if it shouldn't be there, like, walk with him. Do you think, Tony, that there's an awful, because you've been in the media game for a long time, do you think there's an awful lot of this kind of people ticking boxes, which we haven't done here, actually? We've been fairly blunt about things. So is it a case that people are just ticking boxes to get a bit of virtual signals?
Yeah, this virtual signaling now. Look at, there's two schools of opinion on this. One, Roy Keane works for a TV company. Obviously, the World Cup's the biggest gig for every 4 years. He's, a well-respected pundit, so he's going to be there. Other people would say, well, if you feel so strongly about it, don't travel. I have an open mind on it, to be honest. At the end of the day, whether Roy needs a few quid or not, he has a contract and he probably has to be there. And I get that and I understand that. But, I think fair play to him for saying what he had to say. You can say the same for Gary Lineker, who opened, the BBC coverage with a very strong statement. And that's good to see. And I'm glad to see it. And, it's something like that. Even in the GA, it's only in recent years that we have come to embracing the whole LGBTQ plus, the community as well. And it's great to see people like David Goff have been to, the intercounty referee have been at the forefront of that. And you now have, like, in Dublin, like a club which is entirely, focused on gay players. And I think that's brilliant to see. I'm not so sure that, 20 years ago we would have seen that. But I'm delighted that the GA are to the forefront in this. And, the equality officer there has been doing great work as well. And, it's only a few years ago that we actually passed a rule that, banned making racist or discriminatory remarks during the game. Because I used to hear that as a referee. I used to hear stuff being said, but now you never hear it. And that's great. And it's the way to go.
I think I've heard it a few times, but it was usually at our own players for other players. Tomorrow, of course, morning, CET, 11 o'clock, Switzerland are facing the mighty Cameroon. John White, welcome on all the way from Zurich. Are you hopeful for Switzerland to win tomorrow, or are you backing the Lions, the indomitable Lions from Cameroon?
I think it'll be very difficult for Switzerland, with the heats down there in Qatar. I think it's going to be very difficult, but you wouldn't know. They might put up a good performance. They qualify on merit and knocked Italy out there. So, hard to say, but I still think Cameroon will win.
They're playing, of course, then again, this is something that it's interesting to discuss. They're playing in the group with Brazil, and Serbia. That's the big game then tomorrow night, the late game. Remember the last time when Switzerland played in the last World Cup as well, and there was this animosity between the Kosovar players who were playing for Switzerland against Serbia. Is that still there, John, in Switzerland? Might we see that as well? That when they play Serbia, there might be a bit of a niggle.
That's possible, I suppose. Some of them will have their roots back down there in Kosovo and Albania. So, possibly you might see some of that. But, their parents came from there. They're obviously, most of them born here, grew up here and went through the school system. But obviously they have their roots back there in Albania or Kosovo. I don't think we will see, but you never know.
Okay, so if they start doing this with their hands, like doing the eagle signs, then we know what they mean. So after the last World Cup,
that's right.
John Murphy,
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, having lived down there, Alan, for a few years in the Western Balkans, as the phrase is these days, or former Yugoslavia and Albania, you can be sure that there's no love lost there between the anyone who has Kosovo or Albanian roots and Serbs. But I wouldn't underrate Serbia this year. I think they're one of those sleeper teams. They've a lot of good players, and I think they could do very well.
Yeah, they seem to have a fairly decent following as well. I mean, Croatia today, I was very disappointed with them. They didn't seem to do it against Morocco, but it's early days yet. But we'll see what's going to happen. Modric, I mean, he said afterwards that they didn't perform, but we'll see it. John Murphy. What are you hoping to come out of convention? Because we're back at the Gaelic Games now. What are you hoping to come out of convention?
Yeah, we're back to... I mean, Alan, if we're to talk about sports, we should probably be talking about the success of the women's football team or the rugby team rather than the World Cup. But why am I excited to come out of convention? I think the 3 workshops in the afternoon, so hopefully, people will come back after lunch online as well as in person. And we get some ideas there. We're going to, I think it's a really great opportunity to discuss how, as a county, we want to look at our team structure for the World Games, get some ideas around the Pan-Euros, right? We're getting to the point that we're getting close to breaking point at doing a one-day tournament in one location. So looking forward to hearing ideas, whether we go to a multi-day tournament. Do we split it into maybe only a qualification tournament, or do we keep it open? Maybe we go, move it to earlier in the year as a calendar. So we'll say complement the Iberian, the Northwest Championships, rather than pretty much kind of what it is now, which complementing the Central East, Nordics, and Benelux. So I think that'll be a super interesting conversation to hear the club's feedback, right? Obviously, we want as the people going down and traveling. I'm very curious to see that. And I suppose from my perspective, the club feedback is always the interesting part.
Yeah, I said, hearing back from the clubs and getting everyone together as well for the first time in a while since 2019. And I mean, Dara, that was down to you as well and Munich for the last in-person convention. How glad are you that it's not being held in Munich this year?
Well, we couldn't have it every year here, but it's a lot of work for the home. If you're doing it as a club, you need your volunteers. There's the accommodation and whatnot has to be sorted out. So I mean, there's a fair bit of work involved in it, and especially in the run up to it. I'm looking forward to having it in Spain. It's great that we're moving around the regions. There was, I don't know, it worked well from the finance point of view to have it in the Low Countries, because a lot of people could make it there very cheaply and you got a good attendance. But you can see as well with tournaments, whenever you had the European finals in Galicia, of course it's the local players can make it to it easier, and it's the same in the Benelux. You're going to end up with slightly skewed convention if you have it there for attendance in person. So it's good that we're going to Spain, and we keep moving it around the regions. I don't know who's next. I should know, but we had it all in the back of our heads last.
It's France,
2019.
Northwest maybe.
Yeah, it's written in a document somewhere. We had it.
I think it's Nordics actually.
Nordics.
Yeah.
I remember we had a convention in Stockholm before, and I can't remember. I think it was Dara, John, you were probably there. But when we arrived, there was, I think, about 4 foot of snow. And I remember the late Joe McDonough was there and various other people. We had a great convention. because we were all sort of cocooned in this one hotel for the whole weekend, and it was absolutely, an amazing sort of atmosphere to it. But yeah, that was quite a while ago now. I can't remember the year. Yeah, this is my 19th convention. They're all beginning to meld into each other.
That's a good while ago, Tony.
Yeah, 2008 or 2009. It was
yeah,
my
I think
first
so.
as
I
treasurer.
don't remember being in Stockholm.
Yeah, it's funny as we rotation. Like we had a rotation before, and then we went back to having it in Leuven for a number of years in a row. It doesn't seem to matter where we go. We get roughly the same attendance anyway. It just varies as to who's there. It's usually the board plus the clubs that can travel from the local region.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to have it online, right? It's just to have that transparency and representation from everyone, right? Because, like you said, I mean, that's the reason we move around the European hurling finals and football finals, right? Is you can't inconvenience the same people consistently. So, if it's always in the one space, those teams are going to get very fond of having it in their back garden. And then when it moves somewhere else, inevitably they're not delighted about it. But if there's a continuous change, everyone feels that, okay, we're all getting, a fair and equal treatment.
John White, do you think that there's any place in Europe, apart from Switzerland, where it's easy to get there?
Possibly Frankfurt could be a good one. That's a very central place.
John, John Murphy, to get onto that, Frankfurt now, they have Eintracht, then it's handy for Dara if it's on the same weekend as a Bayern Eintracht derby. That's a good thing. John, same with you, John White, on this. What have you seen this year that's been different than other years as secretary? Because I mean, secretary, you're seeing everything coming in and going out. Has it been a big change, or has it been an increase in say correspondence or work this year, say compared to last year, or definitely compared to 2020?
The workload is increasing all the time, unfortunately, but we're growing here in Europe, so that goes with us. Increase in students as well. I think that's probably to do with the Brexit. There's more students coming to Europe, so that means more paperwork. But we're working on that to get all the students online with the LGFA and Camogie Association as well. So hopefully by March or April next year, all the transfers will be done online with about 4 clicks and you're finished with the transfer. At the moment, it's like download, upload, put in your digital signature, send it on to the next person. And it's not just for me, it's for all, the club secretary at home, county secretary at home as well. And also then has to be signed by me and obviously then Crow Park have to sign off it as well. So yeah, that's and a lot of work to be done. Tony will know that for the 10 years he was doing secretary, with a couple of secretaries after that as well. But yeah, definitely the workload is increasing, and as I said in the annual report, it's not sustainable as it is. So the EC and so on will have to think about that for the future from 2024 onwards.
Let's get through 23, John.
Well, that's what I'm saying. 2024 onwards, and survive another year, I think.
It's a serious issue, though. It is a serious issue for volunteers, because we're all involved in our clubs as well. And John's quite right. I did 10 years as secretary, and even when we started, it was a lot smaller. But by the end of the 10 years, we grown, I think, from 11 to 80 clubs, or 70 clubs, something like that. We're 105 clubs now going into convention this weekend. And if you take it that, every other unit, international unit of our size would have some sort of resources, like Australia will be about the same size as us. They've had a secretary stroke operations manager for quite a long time now. So it's something that probably the GA will have to tackle, in terms of supporting international units. A lot of focus on coaching resources and things like that. But at the end of the day, the admin and the governance has to be done as well, or else nothing happens.
Tony, that's it. We've got a couple of questions in. Sorry, Tony. One is how many? Well, you've just answered. How many teams are there in Europe? 105, you said?
Yeah, well, we've just affiliated our latest club now in Tampere, in Finland. That follows up. We've had 10 clubs affiliated this year. That's a record year as far as I can recall. So we're up to 105 now. We have the re-emergence of a club in Estonia and a number of other clubs. And then there's about 10 groups that we're working with at the moment who are interested in starting clubs. We have a couple of groups now in Bydgoszcz and Wrocław in Poland and various other places. So we're only going to get bigger, and the work is only going to increase.
Yeah.
So it's something that's going to have to be tackled. And like in Britain, they've an operations manager who assists a number of the officers. Like he helps out on the treasurer front, on the secretary front, on various things, and that allows, if you want to keep the positions as volunteers, in the traditional officerships, but at least if you have a full-time resource behind that who can take some of the workload off everyone. John White and myself have been involved. We have an extra workload this year with the Global Games Development Fund grants, where effectively stuff that was done in Dublin before is now being done by the international units.
Okay.
In terms of improving voices and things like that.
Just to come across, because we don't have time, a whole lot of time. So there's a question come in from Russia. It's like, so they like the Gaelic football's grown. We had here in Voronezh, we played against them. Will it grow more here? John Murphy, do you think is there scope to grow Gaelic games more? Tony's mentioned a couple of clubs. What regions do you think can be sort of addressed or hit?
What regions can grow Gaelic games? Europe. No, I genuinely like the opportunities there. Like I said, I think we're in a unique set of circumstances where we have 6 games, right? So there's Gaelic football. You also have camogie hurling. You've one wall handball. You bloody rounders is great crack, right, for group friends. So we've great games. So I mean, the way I see it is, wherever we have people interested, that they engage with Tony as, planning and training officer, and work through the kind of formal process of starting a club, and then look to get, a few footballs or hurleys or helmets going. So where do I see it growing? I see it growing everywhere. I don't, as Bob Dylan says, before the sky, there are no fences facing. Like, let's go.
Again, that's Dara. We have the World Games coming up this summer, and a huge amount of pressure is going to be on you for to try and, in terms of like grants and payments and organisation, all that. What do you think? Can you just tell us, like, for any new clubs, because another message just coming in now as well about setting up a club, what kind of finances are involved, and do you think that the World Games are going to encourage more teams to actually kind of invigorate themselves?
Well, to start up a club, it depends. If you're only going to be playing Gaelic football, you just need a football. That's then you start moving into cones and whatever. It's quite straightforward. We have a grant of roughly €300 for new club setting up, and we didn't get so many this year that we're looking for it. I think it's an equipment only grant this year, so you get a pack of balls and whatever else. So you can get set up in football quite easily. With the hurling, it costs, I don't know what, probably €1,500 to €2,000 if you want to start putting a full set of helmets and whatnot together. So it is quite expensive. As for the World Games, it's funny. So some people get really worked up about the World Games. In Europe, we had a participation model, I think you could call it, last time, where we had 15 teams. Sorry, we had more than 15 teams. We had 15 teams that, well, as far as I'm concerned, was 15 teams that I was helping organise accommodation for. And on top of that, and then everybody else was, but thankfully, on top of that, Galicia had teams. I'm not too sure if that ladies team that time, but they're definitely the men's. You had France with a men's and ladies team. There was a German hurling team, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And whatever, but they were off my radar because they were self-sufficient. They were looking after themselves. We paid their entry fee, but after that, they were doing the admin work themselves, which is a small help, but we still had to manage somehow 250 people's accommodation and whatnot. So some people, it really is the highlight of their year or their 2 or 3 years, whatever, to get to the World Games, to represent Europe. it does bring, when people come back, you're talking about, John was saying there, you need people to go and set up clubs. If you see when people come back from the World Games, they're always like evangelical for Gaelic football again. It's brilliant. Except you have the sour tinge that there's so much work into it that it's a job and a half. And for those of us that are working nights till 2 a.m. trying to put together Excel spreadsheets and wonder where there's 10 cents missing here or there, it's so we are struggling to a large extent on the admin work side. And of course, whenever you're basically dealing and trying to book people to hotel rooms or look for a cot for somebody because they're so enthusiastic that they decide to bring their child with them as well, it's brilliant, but that it just takes you away from any strategic stuff, just normal day-to-day stuff like looking at membership fees and whatnot. So yeah, there's a hole there that has to be filled with regards to getting some sort of full-time help, especially for those bursts of work that come now and again for the likes of the World Games, for the development fund, for looking at all those applications, for processing the various reports and whatnot. It's getting towards the stage that for even for your, with such a large committee and the work to divvied up, it sometimes does pile up at the same time.
As Tony said, like it is a case that we've gone past the critical mass of having 2 to 3 full-time officers that will actually be able to look after it. John Murphy, back on to you for this before we wrap up. I want to ask you, in the World Games this coming or next year, will there be grades like we have in, say, for example, the Pan Euros or in competitions here? Will there be graded competitions so that there won't be kind of these professionals from Australia or America stuck in with lassies from well, I can't say Belgium now because they're all doing quite well. But I mean, will there be that?
Yeah. Hold on now. Belgium probably should be senior the way those ladies are playing. I'm going to actually pass this to John White because he's our representative on the World Games kind of subcommittee. The World GA has a subcommittee around the World Games, which John kindly is kind of engaged at from a GG perspective. So maybe John can answer those questions more up to date.
John,
that's true. That is planned actually to have 2 different grades in the international born teams. So, for example, you'd have the French team, which would be very, very strong, and they would be way too strong for a team for exactly coming from, say, from Asia. So, yeah, that's what it's planned at the moment. Depends on the many teams actually qualified.
And John, in that, will they all get a chance to play in Croke Park, or only the, let's just say, okay, for want of a better word, the elite division, will they only get to play in Croke Park, or will both finals be held? Oh, John's just disappeared. I guess
I can answer this one.
A hard question
so
from there.
Yeah, no.
I'm out.
So the decision this year is to actually, so it's going to be in Derry, and the decision is to keep the finals in Derry as well, actually. So because, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is, has anyone tried to stay in Dublin at the moment? Accommodation, cost of that is astronomical. 2, you have to remember, we're going to have like twinned clubs, right? So if a collective few go down to Dublin, right, to say the people that qualify for finals, right, you cause a disconnect in the whole festival of football and hurl, or like festival of Gaelic games, right? So only people competing with finals go somewhere else. The rest of them are left. So instead, if we keep it all in Derry, we're obviously saving the headache and hassle of getting down to Dublin. Everyone stays as a collective. And thirdly, those clubs around Derry that have been helping the clubs can partake in, the celebrations towards the tail end, like whether it's a Friday night or a Saturday night. It'll be a great occasion to incorporate them into the festivities, as opposed to, a select percentage going somewhere else, competing, celebrating there. And the whole point of the World Games is to be inclusive, to create a festival atmosphere, and us staying in Derry as a collective actually works
Okay.
much better for
John,
that. So
I mean, the model,
John,
the model last time where we all had to decamp from Waterford up to Dublin,
it was
etc.
cool with Croke Park
It just
to have
breaks
the
the whole
opportunity.
atmosphere.
Yeah, agree, Tony. Because people, like, you know, the Fisher games, and then they're rushing to go get a bus back to Dublin, and then find a place to stay in Dublin, or to, you know, a lot of it. I agree. I think it's Dennis. It's.
I remember only eight teams got to play in Croke Park.
That's right, I was Tony.
10% of teams who were at the World Games. And like, you know, you were asking about grading. I mean, we play in groups early in the week, and then there's shield and plate finals and all, which are just as important for the players who were in them.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the models that they've actually borrowed from Europe for Pan Euros back in 2016 for the second World Games. When it went to UCD in Dublin, they actually looked at how we did our Pan Euros, and they could see how we used early in the week to stream the teams, and then everyone plays at their own level on the Thursday or Friday when it comes to the semi-finals and finals. And it's a good model, you know.
And I think now we know from experience. I think it's been said as well. I know that Larry McCarthy said it, and John Horde said as well when we were on the show with me. They said that, you know, they've learned from that, so there will be a better grading system. So there is two divisions, at least. You know, teams will still find their level at each side. So that's important.
So I think John meant there was 3 levels. So there's going to be Irish born, and then there's 1, if not 2, international levels.
Yeah,
that'll be 3. Yeah,
correct. Yeah. Sorry there.
Yeah, no bother, John.
We're going to have to. John nipped out for a quick Toblerone, and he's back in with us now, so we're all sorted.
Got me ice cream.
you had to take the ghost down from the mountain because Holly was going to bed. Listen, we're going to have to wrap up now in a second. I'm going to go around. I'm going to start over as I'm looking at on my right hand side, Tony. Tony, what are your, I won't say fears, but what are your hopes for 2023 for GGE?
Well, I suppose, I'm looking at things now. You know, since we were 11 clubs, we're 105. I hope for continued growth, successful World Games with maximum participation. Because, as it was said earlier on, anyone who comes back from the World Games as the absolute evangelist for Gaelic Games. It's like giving them a shot of adrenaline, you know, that lasts for years. So that's wonderful. I think, you know, also the big one for me on the planning and training side will be the implementation of our new strategic plan, where, you know, we need to do a lot of stuff in terms of preparing for the future and in developing and supporting a more regional governance structure. We have it as a game structure, but we need now to build on that as a governance structure. So they'd be the big things for me.
Okay, no, that I think they're achievable. John White, don't jump out. Answer the question. What are you looking forward to for next year? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your fears?
Definitely looking forward to the World Games. So that I think should be a fantastic event up in Derry, and also to our Pan Euros, and also that we get going earlier next year than this year. And that's basically it. Keep going and keep developing GA across Europe, getting bigger and better all the time.
It's important. Dara, what about you? I mean, okay, Bayern have already won the Bundesliga, so what else is there to live for other than Cullen Kills coming back and winning the Europe?
I'll stick to the GA for now. Apart from there's a big home game with the Bayern ladies against Barcelona in the Allianz Arena coming up in a few weeks' time that my daughter is very, very excited about. So we're bringing a few of the girls from her girls' school to that, so that'll be a bit of fun. But for the GA across Europe, one thing hasn't been mentioned yet, but we had a big conference last weekend in Belgium where youth representatives from every club with youth in Europe, or at least everyone that could manage to get somebody down on the day. So there's about 30 people there from every corner of Europe to try and come up with a strategy for more games, more tournaments, just get the youth structures set up properly across Europe. There's been money the last few years for various grants from the Irish government. We haven't managed to actually use that money, and it's a very much a case of use it or lose it. And hopefully by next year we'll actually have the structures in place that for the grants next year, that if we get the money, that there'll be the competitions and cooperation in clubs to do that. So like next year should be a very, very positive one for the youth games across Europe.
Okay, that again is positive. John, what are you looking forward to for next year? What are you hoping is going to happen? Dara's dead on with
Yeah.
club continues.
Yeah,
to grow.
no, like let's start there, right? Like I think the youth were starting to get momentum. That I happened to be down there in the Brussels thing. That was just buzzing. I mean, there was a very palatable enthusiasm and passion. So I think for me, youth, like Tony said, implementing the strategic plan, like putting down that foundation to really set us up for success, and World Games. And I think if there was, geez, like the guys are kind of on the money there. What would I think outside of them? I think coaching and development, right? We had a year here where our coaching officer, Alexander Samartin, did a lot around Europe. I think we're looking at getting some hurling camogie tutors next year. We have somebody currently in Europe, Mickey Quigg, who used to be the New York game development officer. So him, Alexander, I think there's some I think coaching and referee development will be very important next year to, again, going back to the strat plan of laying that foundation to build on for not just next year, but like 5-10 years. So.
Okay, and that's again very, very positive way to end up. And we have a message back in from Verona. You said that we want Gaelic football here in Verona. So Tony, there's a growth.
New club, Tony.
Already tasty Gaelic football. I know the
Happy
boys
to help, as always.
Yeah, so there you go. They tried it. They tried a couple of times. They're actually up here as well. Well, so Moscow's
How far are they from you, Alan, in Moscow?
6 hours by train. So it's kind of Munich, Berlin, I think it would be, right?
East? Would it be east or west?
South.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a very much sports city. It's like soccer. They're now in the Premier League. Fakel Voronezh. Huge sports city. Any sport you name it, they have it, and a lot of very famous like coaches and players and athletes of all sorts have come out of there. So yeah, it's a million plus city, 1 million plus. So you know,
a good population for one GA club town. You know,
one club. Before we forget, Dara, of course, it's your daughter's birthday today. So we should say happy birthday. Today is correct?
It was, yeah. We were celebrating today. Had the birthday cake and all, yeah.
And what age?
Oh, 13.
Oh, Jesus Christ! God love you. My son turned 13 in October. I was going to say I didn't know when, but in October. The change is phenomenal. It starts right away. Just basically when the clock ticks 1 second past midnight, bang! It's life over, Dara. Life over.
Thank God, Dara, you've all that GA work to keep you out of her hair.
Yeah,
no,
or the other way around. Get no time for.
Listen, on that note, I'll say thank you very much to John Murphy, Tony Bass, Dara Kivlin, John White. He something was wrong. He ducked out again, but he just messaged said he's okay. He just couldn't get the connection on. And of course, we'll be having a chat as well on Saturday after the convention when everyone's still sober, working hard, and so on. So, say, gentlemen, thank you very, very much, and enjoy Malaga.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Alan. And see you all soon, guys. Take care and safe travels.
And on that note, I'll say good night for now. The guys will probably stay up for just a second, just catch them for a moment to make plans for the weekend. So, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you for the questions that have come in. I hope we answered them well enough. Again, 105 clubs in Europe, and we're continuing to grow from Iceland to Italy, from Russia to Portugal. We are growing everywhere on the continent. So until Saturday, we'll be back on with a special this Sunday's game on Saturday from the convention in Malaga. So until then, I'm more saying take care of yourselves and each other.